Red Bull plans to enter the 2026 season as a new engine supplier, as this will be the first season that the team will build solely their own engines. But it seems like their plan to circumvent the rules and go around them will be stopped by teams like Ferrari, Mercedes and Audi, and no matter what Red Bull has to say regarding this matter, they've only put a black mark on their legacy yet again. Ferrari started it all at the end of the 2022 season, and now they've been joined by Red Bull's fiercest rivals. If there's one thing that Red Bull has been recognized for in the past few years, it's their dependence on other engine manufacturers. That's how they won the championship from 2010 to 2013, and that's partly how they managed to win the 2021 and 2022 championships with Verstappen. But a couple of years ago, Red Bull recognized that they were here for a long time and that their dependence on other engine manufacturers wasn't something that could go on any longer. That's why they entered the 2021 season with their own powertrain division. But it wasn't fully independent, as the intellectual properties still belonged to Honda. One thing that Honda did in the past couple of years is that they didn't give Red Bull a clear sight of their future plans, which is why the Austrian team was kind of forced to sign up for a partnership with another company, Ford, regarding the 2026 regulations and the new era. But another thing that will happen from 2026 on is that Red Bull will enter the season with their own powertrain division, as Ford will be the commercial partner only. What does this mean for the sport? Well, Red Bull's move to enter the sport with their own powertrain division from 2026 on means that they will use one advantage that comes with this move, which is that they will gain more bench test hours in comparison to their existing competitors. However, that request has been reportedly denied by the FIA, and one of the biggest reasons why is that Red Bull's competitors, Audi, Mercedes and Ferrari, have protested this move by the Austrian team. One can easily understand where the rivals are coming from, because Red Bull will have around 5 years of experience with their own powertrain division, one that Honda owns the intellectual property of once 2026 comes. It is a bit hard to understand how Red Bull will be a rookie in this aspect. And just because Honda owns the intellectual property of the 2021-2025 powertrain divisions, that doesn't mean that Red Bull doesn't understand what exactly is going on behind the curtains of their own team. They found a loophole in the law, and it seems like the FIA isn't willing to grant Red Bull their wish just because they are technically in the right. Christian Horner is very mad about this move of the governing body, and he recently spoke about the challenge that is ahead of Red Bull from 2026 onward. He didn't hold back on words, and when talking about this matter, he said, "We've got 150 weeks left before we have an engine driving out of a pit lane for the first time in the back of a Red Bull car." So, that focuses the mind. It's a big challenge. It's a ballsy undertaking to think an independent team can take on those types of manufacturers. But again, it comes down to the same culture, the same approach that we've had to going racing on the chassis side, and ultimately having everything under one roof, and the benefits that brings long-term is significant. So, that's taking quite a bit of my time and attention just to make sure that we're hitting our targets in that area. Audi is a team that will enter the 2026 season for the first time as an engine manufacturer, and they will be granted extra bench hours to develop their engine. However, they will be the only team that will have this luxury, because they are the only engine manufacturer that enters the 2026 season for the first time. This is done by the FIA in order to allow the other team to catch up with the other rivals and not fall too far behind, but at the same time it enables the other engine manufacturers to always be at the top of their game when it comes to developing their engines and retaining a high level of competitiveness. Red Bull powertrains, which will be rebranded as Red Bull Ford powertrains from 2026, will continue the collaboration with Honda until the beginning of the 2025 season, and it was argued that the knowledge that the Austrian team currently has when it comes to the hybrid parts of the car, as well as the electrification in the sport, is so extensive that it cannot be considered on par with the competition. If the FIA was to grant Red Bull the extra bench hours, then rest assured that the Austrian team would have been extremely powerful, and would have used those extra hours in order to make an engine that would have been practically unbeatable. Think about it. Look at what they're doing currently when they do not own 100% of their powertrain division. If they managed to trick the FIA into granting them this amazing feature along with Audi, then it would have been a very interesting period ahead for the team, but an angry one for its rivals, that's for sure. Earlier this year, Ferrari was the first team to raise its voice against Red Bull and their plan to enter the 2026 season with extra bench hours. And the team's protest note was in the form of them not signing the 2026 sheet for classifying themselves as engine manufacturers. This resulted in them missing the first meeting of the engine manufacturers at the end of December in 2022, and while they have signed the needed forms for 2026, they have drawn attention to Red Bull from Mercedes and Audi as well. Apart from John Elkann, the president of Ferrari, there have been uprisings from high-profile individuals in Mercedes, such as Ben Hodgkinson, as well as 5 more engineers from the Brixworth factory of the Silver Arrows. The campaign, however, has been led by Elkann and the CEO of Ferrari, Benedetto Vigna, and reports say that they have asserted the political weight of the prancing horse. So, what is next for Red Bull after their powertrains have received a ban for 2026 and the extra bench hours? It's unlikely that this decision will hurt them a lot, and we're expecting a quote from Horner in which he'll say something in terms of life not being fair and his team always being bullied by its rivals. But the reality is that Red Bull is doing just fine, and no matter how much Horner wants to dig that down and play down the chances of his team winning it all in 2026, the chances that Red Bull currently has are enormous. For starters, they've signed a partnership with Ford. Many of you don't seem to understand the magnitude of this signature, and while F1 fans were quick to bash the Ford's popularity on the internet and create all sorts of memes, this move itself will have an enormous financial boost for all sides involved. For example, Red Bull will be the leader in the USA when it comes to the fan base and the investors now that they have an American investor that can drag both of these things to the F1 team. And F1 is in a huge uprise in America, with 3 tracks being scheduled to be held in 2023. If we're to judge by the statements of the FIA, the sport will likely continue to grow in the USA, not just in tracks but in teams as well. Andretti is to enter the sport as well, likely from 2026 onward. And apart from him, there are other manufacturers and investors that are patiently waiting on the sidelines to fill the 12th empty seat in Formula 1. Red Bull knows exactly what they're doing. And while they weren't able to outsmart the FIA with the extra bench hour moves, that doesn't mean they will see a drop in their performance. The Austrian team makes very careful moves, as they are very cautious when it comes to being labeled as cheaters and fraudsters yet again after the 2021 fiasco. Now, what remains for the team is to figure out the next driver that will accompany Verstappen from 2026 onward. And as things stand, it seems like they will put themselves in pursuit of Lando Norris. While not many fans are seeing this scenario happen given the fact that Verstappen hasn't proved to be the best teammate out there, it's a huge possibility, and Norris could very well depart from McLaren in 2025. True, Audi is one competitor that would fight for his signature as well, but it's hard to go against a team like Red Bull. With that being said, what do you think about Red Bull wanting to enter the 2026 season as rookies? Let us know in the comments below.